What if I told you that one of the most famous moon hoaxes in history had nothing to do with NASA, rockets, astronauts, flags, or slow motion walking? Somewhere, a conspiracy theorist just dropped his sandwich. Because before people argued about the Apollo moon landing, before YouTube comments became a war zone of do your own research, and before someone decided that every shadow in a photo was clearly a secret government message, there was another moon hoax. A much older one, a much stranger one, a much funnier one. It happened in 1835, when the New York Sun published a series of articles claiming that life had been discovered on the moon. The supposed discovery was falsely linked to the famous astronomer Sir John Herschel, who really was in South Africa studying the sky at the time. That small real fact made the big fake story sound much more serious. But this was not Apollo 11. This was not Neil Armstrong. This was not Buzz Aldrin. This was not Michael Collins. This was not a rocket mission. This was a newspaper story about moon forests, moon rivers, moon animals, moon unicorns, moon beavers, and the final boss of fake science, flying Batmen. Yes, Batmen. Because apparently, in 1835, if you wanted to invent life on the moon, bacteria were too boring. You had to go directly to winged humanoids. Very careful, very scientific, very much peer-reviewed by imagination. The creatures were called Vespertilio Homo, meaning something like Batman. The Library of Congress describes the hoax as a story of supposed lunar life, falsely presented as Herschel's discovery. Now, before someone in the comments starts typing, "See, moon hoax, the moon landing was fake," let us slow down and use the most advanced scientific tool available to humanity: a calendar. The Great Moon Hoax happened in 1835. Apollo 11 landed on the moon in 1969. That is a gap of 134 years. So if someone says, the Great Moon Hoax proves the moon landing was fake, please stay calm. Smile gently. Offer them a timeline. Maybe use large letters. Because confusing an 1835 newspaper satire about lunar bat people with a 1969 space mission is not critical thinking. It is historical soup. Apollo 11 was NASA's mission to land humans on the moon and bring them safely back to Earth. NASA describes the Apollo 11 objective as a crewed lunar landing and return to Earth. So let us compare. The Great Moon Hoax gave us fake moon forests, fake moon animals, and fake moon Batmen. Apollo gave us astronauts, mission records, lunar samples, retroreflectors, photographs, tracking data, and one of the most important exploration events in human history. Both involve the moon. Only one involves two-legged beavers. And I am sorry, but that is a very important difference. To understand why the Great Moon Hoax worked, we need to go back to New York City in the 1830s. There was no internet, no television, no radio, no social media, no comment section full of people named Truth Seeker 1776, explaining telescope optics with the confidence of a man who failed physics but watched a very serious meme. In 1835, if you wanted news, you read a newspaper. And newspapers were changing fast. This was the age of the penny press. Newspapers were cheaper, easier to buy, and made for normal people. They needed attention. They needed drama. They needed stories people would repeat in the street. And the New York Sun understood the game very well. Give people science. Give people mystery. Give people the moon. Then add Batmen. Perfect business model. The fake reports claimed that Herschel had used a powerful telescope at the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. This was clever because Herschel was real. His trip was real. Astronomy was real. Public excitement about science was real. The fake part was the "we found a whole lunar zoo" part. That is one of the oldest tricks of misinformation. A strong lie often hides inside a real fact. The writer did not invent everything. He used a real scientist, a real place, a real public interest in astronomy. Then he added the fantasy. That is much stronger than saying, a magical frog in a hat discovered moon people. Although, honestly, after Moon Batman, the frog would not be the strangest part of this story. The articles describe the moon as a living world. Not a dry, silent, airless place, but a beautiful landscape with valleys, rivers, plants, crystals, animals, and intelligent beings. The story was presented as if these details came from scientific observation, which made the fantasy feel official. And that is where the hoax becomes important. The Great Moon Hoax was not just one silly article. It was a full media event. It had structure. It had suspense. It had authority. It had scientific language. It had a famous name. It had fake sources. It had strange details that made readers say, well, why would someone invent something so specific? My friend, humans invented dragons, vampires, tax forms, and pineapple pizza debates. We can invent details. That is not the hard part. The hard part is proving them. The likely writer was Richard Adams Locke, a reporter for the New York Sun. Many historians identify him as the author, and the story was probably meant as satire, partly mocking wild ideas about life on other worlds. But satire has one problem. It only works if people know it is satire. If they do not, satire becomes fake news wearing a funny hat. And many people believed it, not because they were stupid, because they were human. Humans are very easy to fool when a story gives us four things: a famous name, scientific language, strong emotion, and secret knowledge. The Great Moon Hoax had all four. It had authority because it used Herschel's name. It had detail because it described telescopes, landscapes, animals, and observations. It had emotion because life on the moon sounded amazing. And it had mystery because readers felt they were seeing something hidden from ordinary life. That is still how fake news works today. A fake article says, scientists are shocked. A fake health post says, doctors hate this discovery. A fake space video says, NASA does not want you to see this. And people click. Because apparently, if you add dramatic music and the word secret, human judgment goes outside for a little walk. Real science does not work like that. Real science is slow. It checks. It tests. It repeats. It lets other people test again. It measures. It argues. It corrects itself. It makes graphs that look boring but are actually important. Fake science skips all of that and goes straight to, there are Batmen on the moon. Very efficient. Terrible method. And this is why the Great Moon Hoax should be the central lesson of the story. It was not only funny, it was a perfect example of how fake knowledge can dress like real knowledge. The hoax did not come in saying, hello, I am nonsense. It came dressed as science. It borrowed the name of a real astronomer. It borrowed the style of a research report. It borrowed the public trust in newspapers. It borrowed the wonder people felt when they looked at the moon. Then it sold them a fantasy. That is much more dangerous than simple nonsense. Simple nonsense is easy to reject. Scientific-looking nonsense is harder. It has a lab coat. It has numbers. It has a serious tone. It says observation and discovery. It may even have diagrams. And suddenly people think, maybe this is true. That is why the Great Moon Hoax still matters. Not because of the Batmen, although, let us be honest, the Batmen are doing a lot of work here. It matters because it shows the difference between science and science costume. Science is a method. Science costume is when someone uses scientific words to make a weak claim look strong. The Great Moon Hoax was science costume, a very dramatic costume, with wings. Now let us return to the modern confusion. Some people hear moon hoax and immediately think of Apollo. This is where science must enter the room, wearing a lab coat and carrying that calendar again. The Great Moon Hoax was a newspaper fiction from 1835. Apollo 11 was a space mission from 1969. They are not the same event. They are not the same story. They are not even in the same century. NASA states that Apollo 11 carried out a crude lunar landing, and that the astronauts gathered lunar surface samples and deployed a laser-ranging retroreflector. Apollo astronauts also placed retroreflectors on the moon. These are small, mirror-like devices that allow scientists to send lasers from Earth, measure the return time, and calculate the Earth-Moon distance with high precision. NASA says research with Apollo-era lunar retroreflectors continues today. So yes, there is evidence. Real evidence. Not, my cousin saw a video where a shadow looked weird evidence. Physical samples, measurements, mission records, objects on the lunar surface. Decades of scientific work. But sure, maybe the entire thing was fake because someone zoomed into a flag until reality became blurry. Beautiful. Very scientific. Put that in a lab coat and give it a podcast. The funny thing is that the Great Moon Hoax teaches a lesson to everyone. It teaches us not to believe a story just because it sounds scientific. But it also teaches us not to reject real science just because we personally do not understand it. Not understanding something is not proof that it is fake. If that were true, most of quantum physics would be illegal. Science is not about vibes. Science is not about who speaks louder. Science is not about who says, "wake up," the most times in a comment section. Science is about evidence. The Great Moon Hoax failed that test. Apollo passes it. That is the difference. The Great Moon Hoax also shows how media can use attention. In 1835, attention meant newspaper sales. Today, attention means clicks, views, likes, shares, followers, and ad money. The machine has changed. The reward is the same. A calm headline like, "Astronomers continue careful lunar research," will never travel as fast as, "Secret moon creatures found by giant telescope." One is responsible. The other has Batman. Guess which one gets more clicks? This does not mean people are stupid. It means people are curious. Curiosity is good. Without curiosity, there is no science. But curiosity without checking can become a trap. Wonder is beautiful, but wonder needs proof. Otherwise, wonder becomes a taxi service for nonsense. Eventually, the hoax was exposed. The New York Sun story became famous as a fake series about life and civilization on the moon, falsely attributed to Herschel and a fictional companion. That is another uncomfortable lesson. False stories do not always punish the people who spread them. Sometimes the lie gets attention. The correction gets ignored. The public laughs. The Batmen disappear. And misinformation learns a new trick. Today, a false claim can go viral in hours. Then the correction arrives. A smaller group sees it. Someone comments, "That's what they want you to think." And the original false claim keeps walking around like a zombie in a cheap suit. So what do? We pause. We ask where the story came from. We ask if the source is real. We ask if there is evidence. We ask if trusted sources report the same thing. We ask if the story is using emotion to rush us. We ask if it wants us to believe before we think. These questions are simple, but they are powerful. They are the difference between curiosity and confusion. They are the difference between science and science-flavored soup. And yes, they are the difference between understanding the Great Moon Hoax and thinking it somehow proves Apollo was filmed in a studio. Again, 1835 and 1969. If a theory cannot survive a basic date check, it may need a quiet afternoon and a notebook. The Great Moon Hoax is funny because its claims are wild. Forests on the moon, rivers on the moon, unicorns on the moon, walking beavers on the moon, flying Batman on the moon. It sounds like someone took astronomy, fantasy, and a zoo, put them in a blender, and called it breaking news. But under the comedy, the story is serious. It shows how real science can be used as decoration for fake claims. It shows how a famous name can make weak evidence look strong. It shows how detail can make fiction feel like fact. And it shows how people often believe not what is proven, but what is exciting. That is the real point. The Great Moon Hoax was not only about the moon. It was about us, our love of mystery, our trust in authority, our hunger for discovery, our weakness for a good story. The moon did not have Batmen, but Earth had something even more interesting: humans ready to believe in them. And that brings us to the real reflection. Real science is not perfect because scientists are perfect. Scientists are human too. They make mistakes. They disagree. They change their minds. But real science has something fake science does not have: a method for finding and fixing mistakes. Real science does not ask us to believe quickly. It asks us to test carefully. It does not fear questions. It depends on questions. It does not say, "Trust me because I sound smart." It says, "Here is the evidence. Check it. Test it. Try to prove it wrong." That is the beauty of science. Science keeps our wonder alive, but it also protects that wonder from lies. It lets us look at the moon and feel awe, without needing forests, unicorns, or flying Batmen. Because the real moon is already amazing. The real Apollo story is already amazing. The real history of the Great Moon Hoax is already amazing. We do not need bad hoaxes to make the universe interesting. The universe is doing fine on its own. So ask questions, check sources, look for evidence, respect real science, laugh at absurdity, and never confuse Batmen in a newspaper with astronauts on the moon. Because if you still need flying Batmen to stay entertained, that is fine. Just admit you are watching fantasy, not doing research.